Hey, what is up, my rockers on Patreon? Dirty rockers, my peeps. Thank you for your support, guys. I really appreciate it. So Kenny Crawford from Patreon reached out to me via private message, and he asked me if I would check out Waken the Fallen Resurrected documentary. Well, that's a no-brainer. So here we are. And I get this question all the time. The intro music. The intro music to all of my videos is done by yours truly. And yes, the one you just heard could possibly be a new riff on the new album. Stay tuned. It's going to be a long time. Don't stay tuned. Tune in later. Dirty's got a lot going on these days. So anyway, all right. Let's do this, man. This is my last video of the night. I'm going to watch UFC 252. Go DC. I have an MMA channel that I predicted Stipe to win, but I made it very clear that I'm rooting for DC. So anyway, let's do it, man. No headphones, but guys, I don't like doing headphones on these types of things.
Looking back and thinking that it's been 10 years and some change since Awaken the Fallen was released, it really blows my mind to see where we're at now, knowing that that's really the album that defined our sound.
That was a record that we needed. There was a lot of strong melodies, a lot of interesting arrangements, just some cool ideas.
Through it all, we have these great fans that have been with us since day one. Their passion for this band has only helped it grow to other people.
Listen, man, if this makes it on YouTube, I don't know if it will or not, but if it makes it on YouTube, on Patreon, we pretty much ran through the discography of, for the most part, we got some other stuff we can do, but of Avenged Sevenfold. A couple people turned me on to Avenged Sevenfold, and I've been on an Avenged Sevenfold mission over the past few months now. And I can tell you I'm becoming one of these people that they're talking about.
You see that passion.
Waking the Fallen really started to perpetuate that Avenged cult following. It was the very beginning of that big, underground, psychotic fan base.
Waking is
Sin.
Avenged Sevenfold. In the early days, me and Matt put all of our time and effort into sending our demos to every label in the world. Every punk label you can imagine, every hardcore label.
Man.
We'd look at the back of 7-inch records and be like, some obscure label and be like, let's send them a demo and see if we can get signed.
At the time, we signed with a Belgian label called Good Life, and we were just happy to be on a label.
They really liked what we were doing. They wrote us like a paragraph contract.
With a one-page contract that said basically, you know, we'll pay for sounding the seventh trumpet.
Naturally, we printed it out and signed it without even reading it or showing it to anybody.
I remember they gave us like $2,500 to record that record, and we needed like $2,500 more to use Donald Cameron. So we got jobs, and you know, I worked for my grandfather, and Zach worked, you know, serving coffee.
It got us off our ass. It put us in West Beach studio, which had recorded
Even $5,000 is not a lot.
some of our favorite albums. You know, Offspring's Smash was there, No Effects albums, Bad Religion, Pennywise albums. So just being in there was like legendary for us.
As soon as the record came out, we had a pretty cool following. I think it was a lot of our family and friends that were just kind of coming to support us, but we were doing pretty well. So with that, we got management because our manager, Larry Jacobson, said he'd love to End the Rapture, which is the first song on Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, and saw potential in us. We didn't want a manager because Rancid didn't have a manager, and some bands we looked up to didn't have managers, but he convinced us it would be a good thing.
We were in the van touring for Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, touring everywhere with any band we could possibly open for, playing every city in front of just about nobody.
You know when your band is almost there, when there's always those people in your band that aren't really quite as dedicated, they don't really care as much as you do about it.
Matt was really great about the vision of where he wanted Avenged to go at that point, as was Zachy as well.
We had started out a group of friends. Sin and Jimmy had Pinkley Smooth, their side project band.
And
R.I.P. Jimmy Sullivan.
I knew from day one, me, Jimmy, and Zach were for life, you know, and when we got Gates in the band, we'd already put a record out.
Yeah, that was, for me, the beginning of Avenged Sevenfold. That was my genesis.
Sin had joined the band permanently after hearing Sounding the Seventh Trumpet and wanting to be a part of it, you know, hang out.
Hang on. I gotta see this picture here. I've never seen this before.
We had started
guys,
out a group of friends. Sin
It's for
and
me,
Jimmy
too.
had Pinkley Smooth, their side project band.
And I knew from day one, me, Jimmy, and Zach were for life, you know, and when we got Gates in the band.
Wow.
We'd already put a record out.
Yeah, that was, for me, the beginning of Avenged Sevenfold. That was my genesis.
Sin had joined the band permanently after hearing Sounding the Seventh Trumpet.
Okay, there's Sin on the left there. All right.
Wanting to be a part of it.
Oh, that's the old
hang out
bass
with
player.
friends,
Okay,
have a
I
band
know
that was
his
willing
story.
to tour and record, you know, that was appealing to him.
It has the coolest memories for me because I was welcomed into this band as a writer for the first time. I didn't come in just as a musician. Matt specifically said, I hear you're writing a lot for Pinkley Smooth. Just kind of left it at that, and I was like, I wonder what that means.
You know, he was into it, and we were all friends, so I think he was going to do it because we're friends, and why would you quit on your friends?
At that point, it was me and Matt kind of scouring the internet looking for anybody in Orange County that could play bass.
Before my time, there's a friend of ours, Matt Wendt. I believe he was the first bassist in Avenged.
Matt Wendt, who started the band with us, he wanted to go to college and do other things. You know, we had some other bass players in between there that never made it onto records, but you know, Justin Sane had some issues.
It's funny, we're kind of like the Spinal Tap, but of bassists. Couldn't seem to quite get it right. All great guys, but some of them had different aspirations. And then we got our fearless leader, Johnny Christ, the immeasurable Johnny Christ.
The way I came into the band, you know, I'd been kind of bugging them by, you know, knocking on the garage door where they were rehearsing before.
We lucked out because we would have practices at Matt's parents' house in his garage, and Johnny would come waltzing down the street, smoking cigarettes. He must have been 4 years old at the time, and walk up and be like, yeah, this sounds cool. And he would pick up the bass and start jamming Primus songs with Jimmy in the open garage. And we're like, dude, shut the fucking garage. Like, we're gonna get the police called on it.
Primus, playing bass on a Primus song is no easy task.
You know, they were definitely trying to get work done, and I was, you know, kind of bothersome.
But when Johnny was always kind of hanging around, you know, he's a little younger than us, but you know, he just fit in attitude-wise with Jimmy and with Brian especially, and they would have a lot of fun. So when we finally needed somebody, and we called little Johnny Seward.
It was the last tour for Sounding the Seventh Trumpet before they went in to write a new record.
We called up Johnny. We're like, hey, we got a show in like 4 days, a Showcase Theater. It's going to be sold out. Will you play?
Obviously, that's something I really wanted to do. Playing bass since I was 12 years old and really enjoy music, so the opportunity came up, and I was like, well, you know, at least it'd be fun for me.
So he quit high school. Didn't have to ask him twice. Dropped out of high school. Fucking came over to my house. I showed him how to play a few of the songs. He was ready to go, played his first show, jumped in the tour van with us, never looked back.
And I just said, fuck this. I didn't want to deal with it.
You leave high school because you're selling out Showcase Theater. It's like, what is that, 400 kids? It's like, who would have known it would have got to this point?
It's funny to say now, because at the time I was just so sure of it. Now I'm looking back, I'm like, man, I was kind of a weird kid, you know? Like, there was no guarantee that this was going anywhere, you know? Hadn't even
rarely does.
fallen yet, you know? It was Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, you know?
You know, that's the thing, is there's a million stories like this where they don't make it. This is one in a million.
It's kind of funny, we're still touring in a van. You just give it all up, you know?
At
Keep
that
that in
point,
mind, kids.
that was, you know, that was the lineup.
It was a good lineup, and we were ready to take on the world, and You know, you get out there with a bunch of guys in a van and you're on tour together and you go through all these life experiences. It's one of those things where you just know when it gels. We all want to do this forever.
But at the same time, if you don't take the risk, you know.
We were all on the same page, and that was a cool feeling.
It was probably the best bonding experience you could ever imagine.
What's the, oh, that's a cool ass picture. What's the Wayne Gretzky thing? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
For several years, and this worked out perfectly.
When we first started embarking upon our long journey of Waking the Fallen and the next transition of Avenged Sevenfold, it was a pretty wild and haphazard time.
Touring then was a little different, you know, and it definitely toughened us up for the road.
We weren't just waiting to get a show at Chain Reaction or Showcase Theater within our area. We were jumping in the van or jumping in our cars and playing in, you know, Santa Barbara, playing in San Diego, playing everywhere. If we could play in front of 20 or 30 kids, it was huge for us.
Gym Blossoms.
Hopeless Records took note of us. I mean, they saw us on flyers. We were playing every show that we could.
Well, Hopeless Records came around and they were interested in buying the rights to Sounding the Seventh Trumpet and putting out our next record, which would be Waking the Fallen.
And they came out and saw us, and Lewis, the owner of Hopeless Records, really liked what we were doing. I think he saw that there's a punk rock element, and I think he liked the fact that we had screaming elements. He definitely saw something in us at a time when other people didn't know what we were doing. And for that, I'm really appreciative.
Everybody was
when it gets that loud, I try to mute the mic. That's why he does that.
really excited about what we were doing, and in turn excited us.
You get with Hopeless and it's like, you know, it's a legitimate independent label that's gonna help put some money into the band, really help the distribution and everything, really help that record take off.
No disrespect to Good Life Recordings, but being on a label that was in Belgium was a lot different than being on a label that was in LA, where you could actually work on things together, get a record going. So it was just always really artist friendly, you know, it was great.
As far as when Waking the Fallen was getting worked out, I just remember we were still writing in Matt's parents' garage.
We were constantly going. We weren't even thinking about our next album. We were just trying to come up with songs, because at that point, we're playing the same 11, 12 songs every single night.
Everybody was still at the peak of going crazy and partying.
And we were just all over the place.
I can't imagine how much ass these guys get.
I don't even know how we constructed songs at that time. We just sat there and put all these things into a blender, and that was the Avenged Sevenfold sound.
When you walked in, you wrote anything at any time, so it was ultimately fearless. And I think we've remained true to that, but there has been a stronger sense of what Avenged Sevenfold is and what Avenged Sevenfold sounds like. But then it was just haphazard chaos.
It was a fun dynamic we had.
Waking the Fallen was probably my favorite to write, because there was just no thought, no care in the world. It just allowed for this breeding ground of creativity from us that was uninhibited.
Our sound developed kind of organically because of where we live, Southern California. You know, there was a big punk scene.
We were heavily influenced by punk rock, thrash, metal.
You would have seen us at Warped Tour and you would have seen us at Ozfest as fans. That's just how we rolled.
And at the time, when we were getting excited to write songs, which ended up being Waking the Fallen, we were listening to tons of Pantera and really loving
I said that
solos
before,
and
that
the riffs.
you can hear
We were
the
listening
influences.
to the Master of Puppets from Metallica.
Sepultura and Pantera and Slayer and Megadeth, but we were also big fans of Bad Religion and NoFX and the Misfits. And
I made the comment when I was listening to Waking the Fallen that you could definitely hear some Pantera influences there.
Dead Kennedys
Dimebag.
and all the punk rock stuff. A lot of hardcore stuff.
We had two intentions. We wanted to be the heaviest and most melodic band at that time.
I mean, that was where our heart and minds were at as far as wanting to write songs.
We didn't want to be pigeonholed. Matt started singing more. You know, he's got a great voice, and we didn't want to always rely on hardcore
Phenomenal
breakdowns
voice.
of screams and everything like that. You know, that's still definitely prominent in Awaken the Fallen, but it was a transitional period.
That's really when I think that we came into our modern sound. I think that's when Matt's voice really lent itself to being heard in the way that is Avenged Sevenfold.
It was very progressive. It had still its hardcore roots, but it just was surprisingly so melodic.
And when we finally had enough music written and laid it all down and heard demos and stuff, we realized we might have something here. These songs are really cool. There's a lot of intricate parts. We're really expanding on what we did with Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, trying new things. So we felt really good about it.
Having that kind of foundation gave us a lot of leeway and a strong direction and a sense of identity of exactly where we wanted to go.
There was a lot of
There's a
strong
good song
melodies,
list there.
a lot of interesting arrangements, just some cool ideas, especially for some young kids that are 20 years old and younger.
We didn't really know what we were
Right on.
onto.
Yeah.
I know that we always had a grandiose vision of wanting to be big, but we didn't really have any idea what we were doing at the time.
When you don't know what you're doing, that usually makes for the best music. After you've been around a while, it kind of
Awaken the
starts.
Fallen was the first record where we utilized a
You got to make
producer.
it sound this
With
way.
the help of
you know.
Larry, our manager, always guiding us. He knows the right support team that we need to be with.
We had met our manager at that point and had a record label that was willing to actually pay for a recording. And at that time, for us, that was huge. I mean, the budget was probably really, really small, but they put us in with an actual producer.
A feisty young Bostonian by the name of Mudrock.
And he heard our Second Heartbeat demo and thought what we were doing was really cool.
He really helped with that record, along with his cohort, Fred Archambault, who is just a fucking legend. That guy is just one of the most special human beings in the world. and we're still great friends.
For us, it was really hard because we'd never really worked with a producer. And he was trying to harness the energy and kind of make it more focused. So there's a little bit of a struggle there with me because obviously I grew up punk rock. I wanted everything to be raw and way too fast or way too slow, and I didn't understand the concept of guitars being in tune or timing or tempo, nor did the Rev. I mean, being one of the best drummers I've ever played with, he plays with absolute reckless abandon. You know, he would go fast, he would go slow, his fills would be two all over the place.
He really taught us what it means to not, his words, meander and be masturbatory, which means get your head out of your ass and write songs that aren't just for your own guilty pleasure.
He definitely smacked us into reality, you know, like we needed somebody to question the lyrics, you know, we needed somebody to sit there and tell us when the vocal take wasn't good. We needed Jimmy to not overplay, we needed him to write the right drum parts for the songs. We needed everything to be spaced out and really thought out and how we were going to record this thing.
That's exactly what a producer does. You know, they fine tune everything.
Go through that door, because you'll hear the worst thing you've ever heard.
What's the worst thing I've ever heard?
What's going on in that room?
Let's go check it out.
Yeah, that was the only record that I think I really had a lot of trouble with. It was the first time I was ever in a real studio doing stuff. It was something that, as a kid, I never even thought of. And I thought of, you know, you play in the garage, you play some punk songs, you know,
Saw that
you
Mesa
play
Boogie
around, you just
back
have
there,
fun with it.
dual
You're not thinking about
rectifier.
anything else like that.
I remember all of us just getting our ass kicked in there. You know, it was really learning how things really work. You know, I remember Johnny sitting there with Fred for hours.
Me and Fred just sat in the B studio room, making sure I knew the parts very well, working on my own bass lines while we were demoing out the songs and everything like that.
Johnny became such a great bass player from working with Fred, and Brian just working on his solos for forever. And I remember Brian was even more picky than Mudrock was, because Mudrock a lot of times would say something's good, or Fred would say something's good, and Brian just do it over and over and over.
We definitely learned, you know, an invaluable amount of information from the both of them, and we quickly applied it to the next record.
By City of Evil time, we were running Pro Tools at my house, and we were making demos by ourselves and doing all the pre-production ourselves. So we learned quick, but we definitely needed somebody to teach us, and that was Mudrock and Fred.
Yep.
Once Waking was released, I remember taking the final mixes home and listening to it and really feeling truly proud of the songs. And it was the first time that people that were the closest to me listened to it and kind of had the look on their face like, well, maybe these guys are onto something.
It was taking this subgenre of music to newer heights.
When we were doing Waking the Fallen, there was no word of mouth via the internet. There was no YouTube. There was no Google searching bands. It was handing out flyers. It was playing the breakfast slot at Warped Tour and then standing around the sun for.
It wasn't about your Instagram followers back then, you know.
Demos and flyers before you had to pack up your gear and then drive yourself to the next middle of nowhere city.
I gotta say, we were one of the first bands on Warped Tour, for better or for worse, that was a band that screamed and was heavy and had those metal and those hardcore tendencies.
And people are like, what the fuck is this? This isn't pop punk, this isn't ska, this isn't punk rock. What are these guys doing?
There was a buzz going around, like, who are these guys? You know, how are they?
You know, I could see that because when I was listening to the sounding of the Seventh Trumpet and some of the earlier stuff, it was like, I think I mentioned at the time that you could hear the punk rock elements big time, especially with the Rev. And you know, it's amazing because a lot of times with bands, even really good bands, you don't see a big transition period, you know? Whereas with Avenged, Sevenfold, it was an extreme transition period. I mean, it was extreme. They went from, you know, screaming and punk rock metal to becoming extremely melodic. And then with Hail to the King, you know, I know that was a you know, kind of a tribute to some of their favorite bands and whatnot. And then the Stage, I'm still kind of new to these guys. Then the Stage was very, almost progressive. And it's just amazing the myriad of music that they've played. And one can't help but wonder, where do they go next? You know, whereas with so many other bands, you really, you know where they're going, you know, like even some of my favorite bands, I know what their next album's going to sound like, you know.
Warped Tour, when this is a punk tour and they're not really a punk band. I think that helped us get a lot of attention.
It takes balls to
really
do what they do.
Kick off Waking the Fallen.
It started that whole scene and it created awareness to that on a bigger level and a more grand scale.
Now you look at Warped Tour and it's hard to imagine a tour without all that. You know, there's a lot of bands that are on there doing that.
One other thing I want to say about these guys is that their fan base, there's a reason why there is such a fervor with their fan base. You know, they almost foam at the mouth. And the reason is because everything was built so organically. It wasn't, you know, nowadays you get signed, you know, I think they're with Capitol Records now. You sign with a record company that big, they're doing all of the back work for you. They're creating the Instagram followers and the Twitter followers, and they're having the videos directed by big time directors, and you know, they're kind of paying for you to get up top in a sense. Whereas with Avenged Sevenfold, it was just hard work. That's what it boiled down to. It was just pure hard work. You know, doing all of those clubs, you know, that's how it used to be back in the old days, back in the 70s and 80s. You know, in the 80s, you had, you know, the Whiskey, Go-Go, and the Troubadour, and all these places out in California, and you had all these hair metal bands there. They were starving to death, man. So they were working every club they could, every night they could, and Avenged Sevenfold did exactly that. You know, and I think that's why their fans are so freaking loyal and so hungry for the band, you know. It's also nice to note that you could tell these guys truly appreciate their fans too.
At that point, you know, you're playing in front of thousands of people and doing what you set out to do, and it's like a dream come true.
It was a real way to see the steady growth of the band, actually be able to visualize it and to see the progression, the stage is getting bigger, the crowd's getting bigger, and everything like that.
We have a reason to jump back in the van and go starve ourselves on the road and drive around the country over and over again. And by the time we made our way back home, we had realized that we had went from a band that had 100 fans to a band that maybe had 1,000 fans. And we started noticing people sending us letters and saying, I love what you guys are doing. I got your death bat tattooed on me. And me and Matt would talk to each other, holy shit, this girl got a death bat tattooed.
Probably like 4 months of touring up until that point when we were going around and we started noticing more and more kids with the tattoos and just waiting outside the clubs all day long. It's like, wow, these people really care about what we're doing.
We came back and we had sold out the Henry Fonda Theater in Hollywood.
Which was a really big deal for us at the time to be able to sell that out.
That was huge for us. And we were filming our music video for Unholy Confessions.
You know, a show like that was like the biggest thing we'd been involved in, and it's so funny to think about now. I mean, now we're looking at, God, this summer and all these European festivals, but I mean, we were scared, not scared, but just like, it's your biggest show, and you know you're shooting a video and you want everyone to be pumped.
How the fuck are you guys doing tonight, Ventura? Thank you so much for coming out tonight. You guys have been amazing so far. We are Avenged Sevenfold from Orange County, California. We just did a video for this next song. It'll be out soon. This song's called Unholy Confessions. It's the first track on right around.
Great song.
One thing that we have always had from the early days is integrity with what we do, from the artwork to the songs that we write to the music videos.
Because of the success of Waking the Fallen and then signing a deal with Warner Brothers, part of the deal was like, hey, will you help us make a video for Unholy Confessions? Because when Waking the Fallen was out, we didn't have a budget for a video or even think about making a video.
Unholy Confessions was becoming a popular song that we were playing live. So we did one video first that we weren't happy with, so we scrapped.
And at the time, it was almost like the record label couldn't believe that they had paid for a video, and we said, we're not putting this out.
We used a director that we really respected, and we still do. It just, the video wasn't right for us.
It was a great video too. Thomas Mignoni did it. Talented guy. I think we just didn't have a budget to execute the vision, and it felt that way. So we didn't do it.
And I think a lot of bands, you know, they feel like they spent the money, they have the video. If they don't love it in their heart, they still put it out. And it's just not the right thing to do. The right thing for us to do was go back, film the right video, which is the Unholy Confessions video that was released.
We just said, why are we trying to make a video of something when we can just show one of these live shows and show all these fanatical fans and show our lifestyle?
We had
That's an
noticed
awesome song,
that this
man.
kind of core group had started to grow. You know what, why don't we show what's happening with this band at this moment right now?
That showed off our fans, that showed off our energy on stage, that showed everything that we were truly about.
Those were some good testing grounds for us.
We felt like that song could transcend that record, so we gave it a lot of special love and care.
So we filmed it, but we'd never really filmed a real video at that point.
That was the one and only time I think we played Unholy Confessions more than once in a set.
I think we actually did 2 takes. We played the fucking, that's right, we played the fucking song twice. That's why I was pissed.
Because we were shooting the video and they're like, do you guys think you could play the song more than once?
We had to do that performance a few times, and one was before anybody got there. And we hadn't rocked out in front of nobody in any video, you know, at that point yet, especially when you're on stage and it's supposed to be live, but there's no kids there yet.
At first we're like, that seems weird. We're not going to jeopardize the show for the video. Then we talked about it and we're like, okay, well, we'll let the crowd know the reason why we're doing it.
I'm sure they're fine with that.
I'm informed by the video director that he would like to shoot Unholy Confessions one more time. So if you want to get in this fucking video, show us what the fuck you guys got. This one is Unholy Confessions for the second and last time.
But it felt fucked up to have to do takes at a live show.
We're going to play the song again. But we're doing it so they get extra shots.
It bothered you more than it bothered anybody else, I
loved it.
promise you that.
They went even crazier the second time we played it as soon as they knew that there's going to be a video and everything like that. So
Poor
that's really
security.
cool.
The one thing about these guys is everyone always
Well, not exactly
steps
poor.
up to the
I mean,
plate when things need to be good or need to be right. And that was
some of those
one
chicks
of
are
the first
smoking,
examples
man.
of like, okay, we got to nail this show. We got to, make sure the energy's there, and the video is a testament to that.
Ultimately, it's the video that ended up getting played on MTV2 Headbangers Ball, which is huge for us. I mean, that's people started finding out about us.
There was a lot of kids you'd see out in the crowd with their death bats on their backs or whatever, and they would be pointing at them, trying to get your attention. You'd see them down there and give them a wave, that's cool. It was very exciting, to see someone that appreciative or that into what you're doing artistically, musically. It's just very rewarding. We just couldn't be happier. We had the best fans from day one.
You know what? Something just hit me. Because I know there are a lot of Avenged Sevenfold haters out there, okay? I've talked to some. And I don't know why it took so long, but something just sank in and resonated with me. One of my all-time favorite bands is Rush. I love Rush. I've loved Rush since I was 12 years old. Never missed a tour since 1981. And sometimes I saw them multiple times on those tours. But and they sold out every night. Every one of their albums went platinum. Some of them went double platinum. But that's because of their fan base. Almost no radio play, especially after 1981. After 1984, they had no radio airplay. And yet they still sold out every show in minutes on these big, gigantic worldwide tours. No opening act. They still went platinum, the whole thing, with no radio play. And it all boiled down to the fans. But I also know from talking to people how many people out there hate Rush. And I just made that connection just now. It makes a lot of sense to me now.
Waking the Fallen to me is a record that sounds 10 years old. But I like that. There's a lot of older records that people try to mess with and remix and master, and I think it ruins them. I think the record is what it is, and it's as big as it is because of all the different flavors and all the different nuances of it.
Now that we're older,
Sometimes things need to be remastered badly.
and have written a lot more versatile songs, from groove-oriented to songs like A Little Piece of Heaven that are all over the place, to more rock-driven, like Backcountry. And we're able to go back to playing songs from Waking the Fallen, just about anything on that album, and fans are still really excited to hear them. It's funny because a song like Eternal Rest is still fast as fuck.
We just brought back Eternal Rest into the set for these last South American dates, and it's funny because when you
One second, guys. Okay. Sorry about that. Dogs were going nuts.
play them now, maybe the first night was a little nerve-wracking, but once we got the mix right, it was just so much fun to play. It had this punk rock element to it, and it's one of the more metal songs on that record, but it feels more bare bones and stripped, but aggro, and you kind of felt like how it felt to write a song like that, and to play it was just fun. It was just so much fun.
As we've grown and matured, we've learned that a lot of times less is more. Those songs were even crazier on the demos before.
I've said that so many times. I was just talking about this in another video, I think yesterday. Simplicity always reigns supreme. Make it simple so that people can vibe with it. When you start getting really complex, you ruin the song. You don't have to fill every single 16th note. You just don't have to. Let it breathe, man.
Believe it or not.
We thought at the time they were trying to harness all of our abilities, but really it was still pretty wild and out there.
We really just wanted to write eclectic, adventurous, crazy songs.
We play Unholy Confessions every show, and it's always a crowd favorite.
It's kind of crazy because, you know, this year coming up we're going to be headlining Donington, which is a huge festival in England, and, you know, it's crazy to me to think that we're going to be playing some songs from Waking the Fallen. The songs have come so far, you know, going from being unsigned to all of a sudden playing 3 or 4 songs on the biggest stage in the world. It's kind of a crazy thing to think about.
We were just young kids, out of our minds, writing music that we loved in hopes that somebody would come see our band someday.
I definitely knew that there was a chemistry between Avenged and their fans that was unlike any other band I'd seen, really. They felt like we were doing something really special. I mean, we really did too, to be honest.
And I think that's another reason why our fan base has been
I gotta mention, that's really cool seeing Sin with Les Paul.
so loyal and so great throughout the years, is I think that they recognize that. And flash forward to now,
I know he's got his
you know,
thing with
there's
Schechter
those
now.
same fans out there. They've grown with us as we've grown as a band, and making new songs and new albums and everything like that. The shows have gotten bigger. There's more people, but there's still Avenged Sevenfold fans. They still very much have that mentality that they did at Waking the Fallen.
It really feels like Waking is where it all began. I think Sounding Seven Trumpet was fun and a great starting point, but it was almost like our rehearsal album because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have our lineup solidified. When I listened to Hail to the King or Nightmare, that's where it all began. And it's cool to see that we're staying true to everything we set out to do.
We just had such a great support team and people that came to the table and really gave us a shot.
You know, there's a lot of luck involved when you look at, like, meeting Larry and meeting Ryan, our booking agent, and meeting Mudrock and Fred, and them even willing to
A
do
lot
the
of hard
record.
work too.
It just wouldn't be
brother.
the same without that group of people, you know, doing this thing. You know, Larry always keeping the record labels off our back. Lewis at Hopeless letting us do our thing, you know, not getting on our case about anything. And from early on we learned, just be you and just do your thing and do whatever you want. That's a testament to all those guys. It set us up for a really good future.
We had no idea of what we were getting ourselves into at the time, but it inspired just fun, amazing, memorable moments.
I'm proud of the guys and I'm proud of that record because of that, those songs have stood the test of time.
Yes, they have. R.I.P. Rev. R.I.P. brother. So this clearly was not made right after that album. This was clearly made way after that because he mentioned Nightmare and Hail to the King. Wow, this was, you know, these are always so enjoyable for me. I love getting to know more about Avenged Sevenfold, and you know, when you see these interviews and telling the stories about, you know, the backstories of songs, and we did another one I don't know, a few months ago, and it was kind of the same thing, you know, where you kind of get to know the band a lot more on a more personal level, their likes and dislikes and things like that. And you know, when you're a big fan of a band like that, just getting to know them that much more it's such a difference maker, because when you go and listen to the songs, you know what was behind it, and you know their thought processes and how much they enjoyed it, and you know the realness of it. You know, it's authentic. You know, that's one of the things that the complaints that I hear about Avenged Sevenfold is that it's too polished sounding, and it's not raw anymore. And you know what? The reality is that they make it so it's more palatable. And you know, you can't just constantly keep things so raw that your listenership can only be this wide. You know, you want to expand your fan base, and That's how you do it. You polish things up a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. That's hater talk there. That's just jealousy, you know. And it's jealousy in the fact that you've got so many people out there that, you know, they'll love a different band. And so instead of their favorite band, you know, rising to the occasion, they rather try to tear down a band like Avenged Sevenfold in the thought that builds up their band in their mind or something somehow. I don't know. It's just the world we live in, you know. I'm sure there are going to be negative comments on this video. I don't care. They don't care. They're doing their thing. You know, I do my thing. You know, we let the chips fall where they may. It's that simple, man. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next weekend. Metal Biker Dude, peace.